right, here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of DTIYDK. Don't talk if you don't know, the podcast dedicated to analyzing, dissecting, and officially ranking TFT's finest in North America. My name is Frodan. I am joined by Bryce, and this week we have a different episode. Usually when we have DTIYDK, we have a tournament coming up. We have special guests. We get to really interview and know them. But this time around, Bryce, we're actually doing a review show to reflect upon an tournament that just happened. Before we go too deep into that, let's check in on how your week has been. You know, we only get to hear about Bryce outside of TFT. So how's the past, week and a half, 2 weeks been for you?
It's been good. It was crazy. Last week was really hard getting ready for the event, but I hadn't casted. Well, I casted Twitch Rivals, but I hadn't casted like a part of the World circuit since Regionals because I didn't get an invite to do World. So I really wanted to crush it. It was also our first time casting together since Regionals. So I got prepared for the Astral Cup, which felt good actually to be really I felt like we were both really prepared for that, and I think the event was super fun. I had an absolute blast casting it. So I'm super exhausted because when I cast for a weekend, it's like no downtime. I wake up, parent until call time, and then I cast. And for those of you who've never done it before, casting is low-key kind of exhausting. But
it's pretty exhausting for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when you have 40-minute long game breaks between games. At one point, that was a max time. I think it was like 30-something minutes where it was just absolutely brutal. Part of it is that Wisdom had moved to a new studio.
It's good, yeah.
But also part of it was I physically changed my desk so it could be a standing desk. And so I was like, this weekend, I have a standing desk. I'm going to get all my energy back. You know, it's the first time I've casted TFT in quite some time. I felt a little rusty because it's been months. And so I was ready. And then I was just standing for hours upon hours. It took me back to when I used to work at retail, like Target or Circuit City electronics stores. And I hated that. That's why I actually decided to stop doing that kind of stuff.
And I see you're sitting down again. So does that mean it was a short-lived experiment, or what's the situation?
No, I mean, I could change it right now if you'd like.
Oh, okay. No, you're good.
I can stand up. You just want to see more of
stay relaxed, Dan. Yeah, just low. It's a low key podcast. We don't need to be standing. Right. We have no guests to impress.
Not yet, at least. Maybe we'll pull on guests for review shows. I think that this is a pilot of a new format we're going to be trying, and we promised that at the conception of this format, we were going to say, you know what, it's just going to be me and Bryce exactly like this, two people talking, and it's going to be like an hour. And we'll just talk about all the fun storylines, no assets. And as we started building it out, we decided to build a bunch of assets, and that's just the way it works. I guess we're just tryhards through and through. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the Astral Cup Recap with myself and Bryce. And so let's show what happened, starting from day 3. So day 3 introduced a new format in Astral Cup and competitive TFT for North America, which was point rollover. So how you did on day 3, which was a continuation of the first week, which is open qualifiers. It was the top 32 ladder plus the top 32 performers from the previous week. And if you were able to place in the top 4, you got 3 extra points going to the next day. If you were the top 8, you would get 2 points and then 1 point for the top 12. And this actually started sparking a lot of controversy in terms of the players saying it felt like the point thresholds were too high or too low, and it was just kind of discussed back and forth and debated. And Poor Natures was kind of being yanked back and forth, being tagged everywhere. How did the day 3 point rollover feel to you, Bryce?
I loved it. I think it is a relatively small advantage in the grand scheme of things, unless you're getting 3 points. But if you got 3 points, you kind of earned it. And the reality of TFT tournaments is that no matter what, we have this debate all the time, the ladder versus tourney thing, it's going to be pretty high variance when you play 6 games. So at least there is some small rollover of impact based on your 6 games from the previous day. So I think it was a very welcome change to the format, and I personally would be in favor of this literally every tournament.
Yeah, and I think it gives something to play for even down to the last game, right? You see how Milk missed out on tiebreakers, which is going to be important for the next thing we show. But Milk missed out on top 4 by 1 point, therefore it only gets 2 instead of 3. And then, as you saw for the top 8 cutoff on the final day from 32 down to 8 players, which is another controversial point. We'll get to that in a second. Milk missed that also by 1 point. And so he lost on 2 tiebreakers back to back. And I know that's brutal, but if I can just throw my opinion in here first, Bryce, is it's a tournament. I know that the goal of tournament is always to reward the consistent and the best players as possible without introducing too high of a sample size. But at the same time, I feel like if you look at games of variance, Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone, or even just sports, it doesn't feel like you get that many chances to prove yourself, even if you are the better team with the better player. So I think, in my opinion, it feels super bad for the player, but as the viewer, as the caster, it was really exciting to see where the elite cutoff for that top 8 was.
Yeah, I completely agree. And look, the line has to be drawn somewhere. And as brutal as this was for Milk to get double tiebreakered in a sense, I mean, look, we had multiple people tiebreakered out of World's final day now. It can get really brutal, and it just kind of is what it is. It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, so I think that they're going to play around with it. Obviously, I think that I'm such a big fan of the players, and I'm friends with a lot of the people that actually got screwed by tiebreakers. Goobums, Milk, all these people that I felt like were worthy. They played well enough, right? Because the argument is, what about the weekend's average placement? I think Milk and Goobums had 2 of the top 3 highest AVP all weekend, and they missed it on tiebreakers. That feels really bad. Is there a way we can make it instead of 32-8, maybe 24-8? I don't know the exact numbers, but I like the idea of what we have, and I want to build upon it.
You could have even done AVP for the cutoff, right? What if instead of taking the top 8 players, we took the top 7 and then highest AVP, right?
Yeah.
So that you weren't as likely to wind up at a tiebreaker with them. It could still happen. I mean, you could talk me into top 6 and then the next highest AVP. Like, there's a bunch of different ways you could theoretically do it. Although, how is AVP on the 1 to 8 point format? How can AVP possibly be better? Isn't points just AVP? I mean, Milk's was the best over the course of multiple days, but his AVP that day would have been the same, I guess.
Well, I think it's because of that extra point gap that helps widen a little bit of people's average placement versus not. But again, it's the whole point. Like, I've casted so many Hearthstone Masters Tours, and for people who don't know, Masters Tours are like 200, 300 players, and they cut to the top 16. Like, out of nowhere. It's so brutal. You have to have like an 80% win rate or better on average in order to advance to the playoffs. That's just part of what it is. And I think it could be the fact that we're just not used to it. Maybe people can view it as like playing for top 8 is just bonus and extra, and you're really just focusing on those 5 games. Either way, I think Wisdom and Giant Slayer are clearly trying to improve. And also, the administration part of it was very weak relative to where they used to be, right? They know there's a lot of delays. They know that there's a lot of problems with players just feeling like it was a 7-hour tournament for 6 games. It's not worth it. They're going to continue to improve that as the first weekend in their studio. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of kinks to iron out when you're in a new physical location from a broadcast perspective. So just the improvement from day 3 to day 4 was dramatic, right? It was day 4 felt really good overall. So I'm not stressed about it long term, and it's a good thing for the scene overall for them to have a studio, and it's going to enable them to do a lot of things. Can we also agree that overall this was a change in the right direction? Everyone complained about the open field formats last set not having a real winner. This tournament felt great, even though cutting off 32-8 feels rough. It's what they had to do in order to like narrow the field reasonably and then get to a final 2 games, and it was super hype. Game 6 and 7 were so fun.
Yeah, and there's still objects to play for, right? Sox, Lucan, and Asa all kind of in that mix, but also like could theoretically Noob Albert, Pokygom make that comeback to top 4 and get that spot for mid-set, right? As opposed to just playing for a Jade Cup spot. I think these are all like things that they could play for. So they clearly have designed improvements to the Astral Cup and Open Cup formats. We'll see how Jade Cup rolls around. And so that brings us to the second part of what we talk about Astral Cup, which is who was more right, myself or Bryce? I decided to put up our predictions. Bryce decided to go on Twitter. I go on Reddit, probably our 2 social medias that we consume the most here. And so Bryce decided to go on the record by putting his top 10, aka his top 14, because he put out a bunch of wild cards to hedge his bets. So why don't you just start there? The wild cards, you put Solus, you put 5 wild cards. I just realized because Saint at the end. So you put Solus and Dubao, which I think not many people would, disagree with whatsoever. These are people who have performed, unless you're Goobums, right? If you're Goobums and you're like, why is Solus even mentioned here? He does not even belong on this list. But these are 2 players who have proven themselves. What about Darth, Noob, Garrett, and Saint? Like, why'd you call them out?
So Darth, Noob, and Garrett are 2 players that have been doing really well in ladder basically the entire set and had profiles that suggested to me that they had a good beat on what I thought the tournament meta was likely to be. A lot of my thoughts going into Astral Cup is that I think many people misunderstood the meta, and many people felt like the meta was. I mean, look, it was not the best meta in the world, no doubt about it. But people were talking about it like it was War Week when it was not War Week. There was actually a lot more flexibility to gameplay than I think people were giving it credit for. And so I was indexing more highly to people who I thought were going to be approaching it that way. So that's why they made it. And I think Saint had a very similar beat. I think Saint, his fundamentals aren't that good. He's a little slow. His positioning's a little bit predictable, but his ideas are really good. And when he has good beat on things, he has consistently performed really well in tournaments when he has a good beat on things. And I thought that he did. And I mean, he played well in this event, right? He made day 4. He did it okay on day 4, right? And so it was really not a bad showing from Saint whatsoever. He's 3 points. He says he's in 17th, but he's 3 points short of the tie that got into the top 8. So I think that pick actually wound up panning out well.
Yeah, I think that, you definitely made a couple of really interesting choices in the wildcard stuff. But overall, I think our lists were really good. We both got Goobumps performing pretty well. I'm starting with your top. Sox won the event. Bert made a deep run getting to the top 8, as well as Pocky. Setsuko is a player that we're not actually going to do the performance ratings because we don't actually have access to his VODs. What happened to Setsuko from your perspective? He had so much hype. He was ranked 1 in our power rankings, tied with Sox. He was ranked 1 in the leaderboards going into it for so long. Is this, he tweeted after his elimination saying the worst part is it just feels like all the doubters and haters have more ammo. Do the haters actually have credibility, Bryce? Or do you think Setsuko is just getting unlucky and it's just tournament variance?
I don't think it's just tournament variance. So obviously we did not get to study these games because he did not upload the VOD. And so it's really hard to say exactly what happened, right? And he wasn't on broadcast that much. But one of the only moments I remember him being on broadcast was when he got a random Rage Wing emblem at the end of the game and he just slapped it on his Ornn. And I was kind of flabbergasted because it was such an unforced error. I mean, it is putting a Rage Wing emblem on an Ornn has fight swinging implications. You turn it from a unit. It was Ornn 1 at the time, and it was probably going to cast in 50% of fights. And you basically turned it from a unit that was going to cast 50% of fights to a unit that was going to cast in 0%. And Ornn ulti can absolutely swing fights. So it was just a unbelievable mental error. And so I don't know. It was just a weird move from him, and the results were not that good. I've mentioned this multiple times in the past, but look, if Setsuko is not making it to day 4 of this event, there's no way he's playing in peak form. Not even close. Because I've seen him play on ladder, and these lobbies were basically ladder. And if he was playing as he is capable of playing, then for sure he is capable of making day 2. In fact, he's supposed to make day 2 every time.
Yeah, well, chat's saying, Solus and Bep, one of them, are saying he had best friends. Maybe that's okay, right? Getting the attack speed, so the extra attack speed from Rage Wing plus best friends. Maybe. I think the whole point that Bryce is trying to make specifically is that it just didn't look like, from the small glimpses that we got, whether or not Setsuko was in that peak form. There's also been stories where Setsuko's streaming a lot going into the event. Maybe he's not completely in mental condition, proper mental conditioning, right? Soju has the same problem. Stream 20 hours before the tournament and say, okay, it's 2 free. I feel like I'm perfect. And then they have to sit for 45 minutes after they take a unfortunate 7th or something. And that just sits there, right? So I don't know exactly the context behind it. I really wish we had the VODs to study because we went back and watched a lot of VODs on top of casting the entire weekend. All I'm going to say is right now, I feel a little hesitant to rank Setsuko a little bit higher next time it comes around until, maybe it actually benefits him. Because until he proves himself, I think there's just this monkey on his back. And it's really interesting with competitor psychology, right? It might just take one good event at high stakes for Setsuko, because he's definitely done well, right? He's won Challenger Series, he's done well in other smaller events. But if he just does have that one huge hallmark performance, maybe it can just lift off everything that he puts pressure on himself. So clearly, it does get to him to a point where he's tweeting about it.
Maybe he needs to play in some of these open bracket things, right? There's a thing in basketball where people talk about, if a scorer is having a bad night, get them an opportunity to get to the free throw line. They get to see the ball go through the hoop, and all of a sudden it snowballs from there. It happens all the time. Maybe he just needs to do that. Maybe he just needs to go and style on slightly easier tournaments and build up that tournament confidence, because it's clear that is lacking on some level.
Well, Iniko says he is the monkey. One thing that I can appreciate is that Setsuko has been putting out the content. I feel like I'm getting to know him more as a competitor, as a person. Also, it feels like he does have a good group of friends to support him, and I think that's really huge. A big part of TFT right now feels like, unironically, the friends you make along the way, you having a good group to practice with, or people to talk with, or even just to vent all your tilt and frustrations towards is huge. So we'll see as Iniko and Sox are talking about it. I like this. Actually, Sox in chat says that he had to play a lot of Giant Slayer Fight Nights to even become confident to play in tournaments. And I think everyone has a similar story of like when that tournament mindset can really click for them. I think Setsuko can get there. And he's also really young. I think another thing people forget is that a lot of these people that compete, they even start when they're teenagers, right? So it's like hard because a lot of expectations and pressure can make that fragile mindset. So I look forward to it. We won't spend too much more time because we have to get to the main meat. One of the main segments we're going to be doing for the review shows is performance ratings. This is actually something I'm really excited about because I think that it has a lot of source for debate. So without further ado, we're going to showcase our ratings. And what this is it's just an impression of Bryce and myself ranking the players. We scored from 1 to 10 on how well they think they did relative to the field. And so if your name is on this list, that's a good thing. We took the top 8 performers based off the scores of the final day, plus 8 players that we thought were noteworthy for highlighting. So I know what people are going to say. Taco Bell Wi-Fi, you gave him a 6. Oh, aren't you flaming him? That's kind of rude. The fact that they're on the list and other people are not is already showing that it's a player to keep an eye on. So we want to make that as a distinction before we get too much further. But that being said, I think it's really fascinating to see where a lot of these rank. So where do you want to start the conversation, Bryce? You want to start at the top, the bottom, the middle? You pick.
I think if we're going to start at one side, we start at the bottom and work our way up, personally. Okay. But I'm down if you want to just go in random order. We probably don't have to do everyone, right? So I'll defer to you.
We can do quick beats if we feel like it's not super noteworthy. So let's start off with Taco Bell Wi-Fi. And by the way, just as one little caveat I forgot to say, the reason why we left 17 to 24 open is because we're going to be adding more lists or names to the list. So as more tournaments come up, we're going to add more performances, show a little heat map. And then at the end of the set, we get to show all the performance ratings, maybe even get a little bit of contrast to the power rankings. I think it's going to be really fun.
And just to frame it up really fast going in, Dan, because people, Sox is like, what is this based on? It looks arbitrary. It kind of is on some level, right? These totally are like arbitrary gut check impressions of the tournament. Dan and I watched, obviously we casted half the games. Half the games where we weren't casting, we watched. Each of us would multi-twitch and have 4 player streams up at once, one from each lobby, and on day 3, and then just 4 players on day 4. And then we VOD reviewed a bunch. Between Dan and I, all 16 of these players, we VOD reviewed at least 3 games of each of them. So it's not anywhere near perfect, but there's some basis for it.
Yeah, and it's not that everyone else, I see ask people in chat, is everyone else have a 0? No, it's just Bryce and I are 2 humans with jobs and families. It's just a little bit hard. These are people we've watched. Like my rule was I need to have at least watched 3 games from this player in order to feel like I have a general read on how they were playing that week. And even though they played, 12 games, I definitely have watched more than 3 for most of this, but that was a minimum requirement. And that's just so hard when you have 64 players to cover. So our idea was just continue to gather data and see how it goes. And if it goes well, we'll add more people to watch more VODs, contribute more towards this, because I think it's just a fun conversation starter. Anyways, Taco Bell Wi-Fi at 6. Bryce, you already said a lot on Ramblin' Stream that it wasn't really about Taco Bell's gameplay, as in more so that you felt like he was just kind of sticking to a game plan and everything was just falling into place, so nothing was particularly impressive, but it seemed like he executed relatively well upon his main strategy.
Yeah, his main strategy was Siphon. He played Bruiser opening almost every game. The games where he hit Siphon, he clearly knew how to play it around it. The games where he didn't hit Siphon, there were times when it looked okay, and then there were times where he looked completely lost. So it was a relatively narrow approach to the patch that found success on day 3 when he was hitting, and that's why he did so well. And then he didn't hit as much, and he got forced out of comfort zone on day 4. It wasn't that it was bad. I didn't see a ton of unforced errors in his play. I just didn't see a lot that got me really excited about it. So I think he was clearly better than your average player in the field. probably by a decent margin, but it wasn't like, okay, yeah, I think this guy, if you run this tournament back 10 times, is going to day 4 like every time and is going to constantly be in competition.
Okay, yes, I agree. And also, I just want to cut off Goobums right here. 8.5 isn't bad. We're saying
How would it be bad? What?
performance relative to the field. The average is a 5.5 on a scale of 1 to 10. So we're already
Goobums, you're literally tied for third, and you're saying we raise you low? Hello?
I think that... Okay, and I think Goobums would probably say the reason why he feels like that is because there's only one spot that he thinks he could have played better or something along those lines. We'll get to it, maybe. You know what? Maybe we just skip Goobums just to torture him a little bit further. Let's talk about Dace. And the reason why we brought up Dace and Taco Wi-Fi is going into day number 4, they were 2 of the top 3 players in scores. And then, in day number 4, it just felt like they were players to focus on. So Bryce and I already had them. You've watched Dace a little bit more than I have. What was your general read of Dace this weekend?
I watched his first 4 games of day 4. And he played really fast tempo in a meta where I think not that many people were playing that way. It was full Bebe-esque. We're talking level to 6 on 2-5, level to 7 with 0 gold on 3-2 kind of vibes. Not every game, but when he was win streaking. Slamming items at all cost, like really, really pushing the pace of the game. And there were moments that what he did impressed me, and he took interesting lines or had interesting reads, and there were times when it felt like Milk could have made a TikTok about him totally justifiably. And we're going to look at one of those spots later today. So he had some high highs and some low lows from my perspective.
Oh, I see the baby. If you like baby memes, just wait till our next segment. You're going to love it. Kurum. Let's talk a little bit about Kurum. So Kurum was a player that I think we had a lot of high hopes for, but medium expectation. I think for the most part, it does seem like Kurum is still he's a very good ladder player for sure, no doubt. He's still climbing. And going into tournament, he still seems relatively consistent. It just didn't feel like Kurum had the goods in the weekend, right? Like there's moments where he was stumbling, right? The Shimmer Scale game comes to a moment where like he was on broadcast, everyone's like watching him have 90 gold, level 9, 115 gold. Like by all means, he was like win streaking. By all means, it felt like he should have closed the game out, and somehow Sox pulled it back. Sox played out of his mind that game. He was doing a guild emblem siphon pivot. He was trying to play Zaya, I believe, or some other board that wasn't related to it. Found Siphon, decided to build an entire vertical guild around that Siphon, and somehow navigated a win over Kurum's like 9 Shimmer Scale completely capped board. But yet Kurum did throw, and I think that's just a small. And again, it's not because of that one incident that we rate him lower. It's just like that was an example of how he wasn't dialed in or rather locked in to make sure that he had all his corners covered for the entire weekend. And a couple of spots where he just looked lost, right? Kurum has a lot of criticisms of not learning how to play from behind. And there's a lot of situations where when the game he's doing well, he gets second. And the next game, he goes 8th because he just really late to get anything going. And then the next game, second. Everything goes really well according to game plan. Next game, 8th again. And it was just like, it just felt really brutal. I remember one game, Kurum had double trouble, and he actually played no duplicate copies of units on the board. He was trying so hard to find like another Siphon. He was stuck on Siphon 1. He didn't play the traditional double treble Varus line. It just felt like overall he was struggling to get things done. And some of the ideas were there, but the execution was not. Do you think I'm being fair, like wrapping up Kurum's weekend here?
Yeah, I think you're being super fair. You watched a lot more of Kurum than I did because when we were doing our multi-Twitch, you picked him a couple of times, and so I wasn't watching him. I didn't get a chance to do a VOD review for Kurum, but my impressions of his play was exactly what you said. When it was in, he played well, and then he felt like he was kind of wandering a little bit. I don't think he thinks he played well. I mean, listening to him after the event, he did not like sing his own praises at all. He was like, yeah, I sucked this event. Even the day of, I was in Discord with Kurum. Who was it? It was Kurum, Robin, and Nico and Nubal, maybe, I think. And I was like, yo, I'm doing my rankings. Should I pick any of you? And they were all like, no, don't pick me. I'm not good right now.
Okay. Speaking of good or not good, a player that's always in the center of discussion of this is Soju. He's up there, right, like tied at Kurum. And again, I want to point out that Bryce and I ranked them separately, and then we combined it. So sometimes it might be like Bryce gave him an 8, I gave a 6, and then it's like a 7 at average. So it's a combination of our scores. Soju says that he felt like he played pretty well, and at the same time, he felt like he could have done better, but overall, it's like whatever. He was going 4th and 5th all weekend long. Like his average was like a 4.5 for the most part all throughout the weekend. And Soju obviously is the most popular player in North America. So how did you view his weekend overall? Do you think it was like an overall success?
Fine. I think he mid-rolled and played okay for him, right? Like he's very good relative to the field, and when he's dialed in, he's capable of being up with the top, but I don't think he put on that kind of performance this weekend. I don't think he had it going in either, for what it's worth. I think that he kind of had it like 3 days before when the patch was played very narrowly, and he was turbo climbing, basically just flexing Soy Siphon with some Guild Zaya thrown in, because he knows all those lines really well. But by the time we got to the tournament, the patch had opened up considerably. There were a number of other broken lines that people had figured out and were playing around in some capacity, right? Corki was definitely really strong on this patch, and Soju was basically playing no Corki. Varus was really good. Soju was basically playing no Varus. There's a bunch of different lines that I think he didn't really have in his pocket for this tournament.
He did not get a lot of the crazy augments to start things off, right?
Totally.
He didn't have like double trouble starts very often, but yeah, I think he did okay, and I think that's ultimately why we gave him that 7, because he didn't do anything particularly outstanding. He didn't do anything quite poor, and I think that's still worth recognizing relative to where people expect him. There's like a large part of the NA fan base that just seems like they think that Soju is incapable of getting out of day one of tournaments for some reason, which is just not true. Actually, Soju has had some pretty good performances. Soju kind of has that same problem as, if you guys can remember Crowan back in the day. Crowan would compete all the time, get to the top 8, but never actually win tournaments, but always would kind of get to that final stage of competition. So just kind of that same way, like he often would get to like the final day of competition, but either like go 8th or flame out, or like barely miss the cutoff there. I don't know if necessarily this is something indicative of Soju's playstyle or whatnot, but I just feel like the more I watch Soju in tournament, the more I feel like he's actually a top 4 player in general, which is quite a sharp contrast to his first raise mentality on ladder. It's so fascinating, but I need a little bit more evidence and data before I can say that confidently. I'm just thinking out loud right now, just my early musings, which is really fascinating considering his reputation as, a go big or go home, risky for the biscuit. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Appies and Dish Sub. I think we can talk about them in tandem. I think they had a lot of expectations going in. Appies was sick and wasn't actually expected to do really well, even by his own measure. But I like a lot of the creative lines. Once more, Appies decided to play a very flex, open playstyle. His playstyle was oriented around tempo early through assassins and high value 2 costs, right? He wanted to play around Shen. He wanted to play around Kiana. He wanted to play around Braum, Thresh, like high efficiency units that you don't have to sell, and they're still going to be serviceable if you find like a 1-star 4 cost, for example, to slot in. And then use that to flex into Deja or Talon or like Zai, like all these different kinds of things to play. I think it worked out okay, but I love the idea, and I think that's what gave him like a little half-point bump, because I think his creativity and his game plan sounded good in theory, even if it didn't exactly result in like a series of insane finishes.
Yeah, if memory serves, we rounded him up. Like I think you gave him a 7.5 and I gave him a 7, or maybe you gave him an 8 and I gave him a 7. I don't think this was Appy's best tournament. I don't think he was feeling in peak shape, and I also think it was not a creative patch. We talked about the patch widening, and there were a lot of other broken lines, but you didn't want to deviate from those broken lines. This was not a time in general to get super creative, and he just couldn't help himself a couple of games. I mean, there was one game where he got onto a mages line, and you and I were watching, and we were like, I mean, this is just an 8th. I mean, it's basically just no way that he could, even as much as it feels so like bad. That's where the game is taking him. I promise you, Appies, this is not the path you want to go down, but he can't help himself sometimes. I think if the stakes were bigger, he might have been able to, but given his mental condition and, that the state of the patch, he did pretty darn well considering.
Sure. Actually, with that, I just want to talk a little bit about Lucan as well. Lucan did play mages. Like, on the last day, as far as that was the most majority of what I watched, was almost exclusively mages, which also resulted in almost winning the tournament. Now, the reason, now that's already worth commendation. I think a lot of people would say, like, hey, that's already impressive. Why isn't it higher? I watched the VODs, and I just have to say, this man gets what he wants every time. It's like, he if he's opening mages, it's Luden's Echo or Meditation every time. if he picked Recombobulator on 3-2 and hit an Itis 2, and at 4-5, 4-5 had a Spat, Shimmer Heart, and 9 Shimmer Scale. At 4-5 had all this stuff. So it's like I can't give like max points to somebody that high rolled that hard. But I will say that I'm much more likely to give Lucan a better score moving forward if he's able to repeat that, because he did take a line that wasn't very contested whatsoever, and that already has caught my attention. And I think that it's really cool to see a player be able to be rewarded for going a different way.
I agree with everything you just said. I think that the Shimmer Scale high roll is like even more illegal than Dan is describing. Like, it's actually he hits the Zoe right away. He hits freaking. It was so disgusting, this game. He winds up getting Zoe 3, which is like, it's what should have happened in the Kurum game. It's like, you know, if Kurum had played it out solidly, then he just raffle stomps the lobby, right? And it's exactly what Lucan did. So it's like he capitalized on it well. Then the next game he opens Rod, he gets a good augment, and he gets a full Sunfire drop, right? He just gets belt armor, right? It shit like that. So this is why you watch the games. Like, and at the start of this, Nico was like, shouldn't Lucan be higher? And I'm like, honestly, man, I think I had him at a 7. I'm happy for him. I think it was a really fun TFT moment. I think it was cool to see someone off meta. But if you watch the games, I don't think that this is. It was not crazy impressive to me. This was a man who took an offbeat line that could have easily flamed out in this tournament if he had not high rolled, from my perspective.
So Dish Soap, a player that I hype up a lot. I think, you know, I just think very highly of people that can be as consistent on ladder as as Dish Soap and Setsuko can be. I looked at some of Dish Soap's spots, pretty tough. I think that Dish Soap wasn't getting as easy stage 2s and 3s as he's used to. When he's typing in chat between games, I saw him like saying like, "Look, I think I could have played stage 3 better." But overall, it feels like players like Dish Soap just wasn't able to put on that impressive early game as you see him in ladder. Whenever I watch Dish Soap play ladder, this dude always has 100 HP going to 3-5. It just feels, or like a 98 HP in streaking. I just didn't feel like that was happening. And it could be a combination of the items and his boards weren't really coming together because he didn't really want to roll that much. And even when he did roll, he wasn't really getting exactly what he needed, right? He had like a Revel Crown opener. Took forever for him to get like that Deja online, and as a result, flamed out. That kind of stuff happens. So, you know, that I still think ultimately Dish Soap played solidly, but was not firmly rewarded on day 4. But his day 3 was very solid, and it resulted in him having a high finish and was able to get those extra bonus points. So I think that's worth also recognizing as well.
I agree. I think I give him an 8. I think I'm slightly higher than you. I really actually overall found his performance to be impressive. I think he was on the mid to low roll side of things. The only game that I think he fucked up was the Revel game you were talking about. I disagree with like multiple of his decisions during it. I actually disagree with it so much that I messaged him afterwards. I was like curious, like, hey, do you remember this game?
Oh, really? You never told me this.
What'd you think? Yeah, well, I was like, what did you think of the line? I'm kind of curious. And he was like, his immediate response was, I haven't really played much of that line. So I wasn't really sure. And I was like, did you think about this versus this or this versus this? And so we had a nice little chat about it. I really like Dish Soap. I think he played a very solid tournament, and if things had gone a little bit more his way, he could have been competing for the top 8 or even top 1. Probably not top 1. I don't think he's playing quite that clean, but he's really good, and I'm excited to watch him play more tourneys.
Let's talk about Solus. Okay, this man might be a 7.5 because some people rate him a 10 and some people rate him a 5. He is that polarizing. That was not the case with myself and Bryce. I think we actually agreed at a 7.5 around
I think
here.
so too. Yeah.
What is it about Solus? How does he keep getting to these top 8s? And why does every other player that VOD review have so many inflammatory things to say about his gameplay?
Okay. One, he is always doing it because he's the god of TFT. We already established this. We know that it's done, right? So that's how he's always there on the final day. And then why do some people value him highly? I messaged Asa after his VOD review with Solus because I really respect Asa's opinion about the game. And he put it very simply in a way that I loved, which is shaky fundamentals, great ideas. And there are things about the way in which Solus approaches a game of TFT that I just really enjoy. And he thinks about a lot of things that some people aren't thinking about at all. And like even watching back his VOD review with Asa was super fun because he would ask about things that Asa wasn't even paying attention to. It'd be like a stage 2 fight or 3 fight. And he'd go, what do you think about my positioning here? And Asa's like, I don't know, like, it's, whatever. I'll go back and watch. And then Solus would, like, talk him through why he did it the way he did. And it's like, damn, that's pretty clean, Solus. Like, I see you. So, yeah, I mean, look, he makes mistakes that, like, anyone can point out, but he also does a half dozen things or more over the course of a 6-game tournament day that no one in the field is doing that is good. Good TFT.
Oh yeah. Solus misses the trees for the forest. You know what I mean? Like he's always looking so much big brain picture than what us mere mortals could fathom. But actually, in a more serious note, I think one thing that another person said, I think it was Nature's perhaps, is a person that's been watching Solus for a long time since that one, saying that he felt like Solus recognizes spots very well and more importantly understands how to come out on the favorable side of like a lucky outcome or high roll situation. And it feels like Solus is really opportunistic in that sense. And I think that works out really great for tournaments in particular because this man puts himself in situations that I don't feel like I would ever even be able to get into that spot. And we'll show you an example of it later on because what we did before the show was compile some highlights and lowlights that we'll show later on, and Solus does have an appearance there. So we'll talk about that a little bit. All right, let's talk about Pocky and Bert, the 8s. So Pocky comes into this tournament. It's like his first tournament. I mean, he did play the previous weekend and put on quite a show, but he was kind of memeing around. I wasn't sure what version of Pocky was going to come this weekend. And then all of a sudden, he's winning with Hecarim 3 Deathcap carry. 2K doing all entire field, right? He's playing AD Sona 3 with like Ruden's Last Whisper, and he's winning lobbies. And more importantly, he's having fun and laughing and smiling and pretty much like kind of borderline trolling and sneaks his way into the top 8 at the very last second as well. I feel like if Pocky took it seriously and said like, okay, like hard sweat, I'm going to try, like, I don't care if I'm contested, I'll play the good meta stuff. This could easily be like 8.59 and just put himself up there. I just got to say that I'm just so impressed whenever I watch Pocky play. And there's few players that I have more fun watching when he's having fun on stream.
Totally. And when is he not having fun on stream, by the way? Isn't he always having a good time no matter the stakes, right? We didn't get to see... I'm trying to remember what his reaction was when he like sin spatted the Callista at regionals and kind of threw regionals.
Oh no, I feel this story again? Bryce, we talked about it like half a dozen times.
I know, but I feel like he's probably laughing about it. He is such a fun-loving human being, and he enjoys TFT so much that I'm like trying to pick the worst moment of his career, and I'm just picturing him with like a shitty green on his face being like, we tried. Like, unlucky. Go next. Like, we learned and we'll do something different another time.
It cost him a world spot.
Yeah, I know, but I actually think if anyone can take that on the chin, it's Pocky. Like, most people would be very upset at that situation, and I think Pocky just loves life, loves the game, and he's so fun to watch.
Yeah, I think Pocky is back. He's put everybody else on notice. A lot of people didn't even rank him anymore, right? He is very much in there in the mix, and that this guy is really good because every time like Soju and Q and all them like we're talking about some of the best players, they always bring up like, what about Pocky? No one's talking about this guy. He's so good. Actually, that bridges perfectly into the other person in the 8 club, Bertosaurus, a player that I had going into the tournament ranked number 1, and I don't feel wrong about it. This guy really pulled some rabbits out of hats. He did. I think the most creative board was he was playing a Shimmer Scale line, and instead of going vertical Shimmer Scale, he slowly peeled off and played like Guardian Dragonmancer Nico with 3 Dragonmancer, 3 Shimmer Scale, 3 Ragewing carrying Zaya and Swain, and just doing like all kinds of weird stuff. And that just feels like exactly what Bert's alley is. He just kind of sees the avenue. And what makes this impressive is that he was at like 6 HP. This dude, I was like, he's bot 4. Like, this is a really brutal way. Like, he's doing his best. And slowly but surely made this insane comeback. And I think that was a game that really defined what makes Bert a special player.
Yeah, I had the exact same game flagged. I wrote down his final board. It was Itis, Nico, Ashe, Hecarim, Swain, Zaya, and Anivia, which wanted to be Soraka, but he never got the Soraka. And It was a sick board. It was an awesome game. It was Burt at his best. I think the following game was really interesting. Flip side of that coin, because the following game he plays really flexibly as well. He slams an early mage spat on a Jade board because he has Zoe, and then he pivots to a Corki Xiphon. He plays this totally like Jade constructed board, deconstructs the whole thing, and builds like a more standard Xiphon mage board. But the thing is, the items he had slammed, he didn't really have a true backline carry, and so he was very frustrated with that game. He wound up taking a 6, and he said everyone in the lobby is just slightly stronger than me, and I think that is what happened, but I think that the pieces he was trying to put together really didn't actually fit. I'm not sure what pieces he could have put together, but it was pretty clear to me when he was going the line. I was like, I feel like this board, even if you hit, isn't going to be good enough, and then he hit, and he went 6th. He lost almost every fight. So it's the double-edged sword. He also, lost to Krugs in this event, so there's only so high that we. Yes, there's only so high we can put this man, but he was very impressive.
Yes, I wanted to rank him higher, but unfortunately, he made a decision that made me feel like I couldn't put him a little bit higher. Losing to Krugs, I mean, it happens to everybody, but just it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to everybody in tournament.
Yes, his first time chat. He's on that.
Oh gosh! All right.
Oh, the other thing I want to say, because we're not picking the spot, Bert, go back and watch your game 1 spot, buddy, on day 4. That when you lose to Krugs, I'm pretty sure it was a Swain pivot. You had 2 Swains with bow tier. I'm very insistent that it was a Swain pivot this game, and that you were not supposed to commit to Nidalee reroll with no astral ticks whatsoever. Those items and 2 Nidalees, only 2 copies of Nidalee. I think you were even if you hit Nidalee there, you're most of the time going to hit it like 0 gold, fall behind tempo, and it's just doomed.
Okay,
whereas
what if
Swain, you can actually,
What if he beat Krugs that game though?
Yeah, I mean, I think he still goes 8th, to be honest, but
okay.
But he would have gone 8th without losing to Krugs.
Socks asked, where's Krugs on this list? It should be an 8.5. That's a snub. We'll include Krugs.
Agree.
Next ranking. Or next rating, rather. Ratings versus ranking, we got to make that differentiation. All right, New Bowel. So New Bowel, I think, had very quietly one of the best weekends out there, and is reflecting the fact that I put him in the top 5. I think New Bowel put some really interesting tech out there. Where to start? For one thing, this dude played Mage Cap Talon, and it was popping off. It was like Mage Cap Talon, because the thing is, he had 2 of them. He had one on Sona, and then he had the option to play Siphon. He had the option to put Mage Emblem on Siphon, and he didn't. And I was like, this guy gets it, because I just not convinced that Mage Siphon is a real thing. China does it, and I'm just like, you guys are trolling. You guys are actively baiting the fact that other regions are watching you now. Mage Siphon is not it. It's so inconsistent, and it feels even more RNG than Siphon can sometimes feel than before. So he puts Mage Cap on Talon. Talon's popping off. It's like jumping twice, but he like leans so well into his augments. It's just very, very intelligent. And New Bauer just does a lot of really interesting stuff. He was playing like 5 Cavalier Corki 2 carry, and it was because he was low rolling that he pulled himself and didn't go 8th. Like he rolled to 0 at 3-5 or 3-6, tried to find like a Nunu 2, which he had a pair of Nunu since like 2-1 or something, or 2-2. And he just missed, right? So like he's at 0 gold level 6 at the end of stage 3, and somehow does not go 8 by playing some really weird stuff. I think New Bal really showed a lot of the hype that Goobums and Setsuko and Spencer, like that camp of players, I've always talked about how great New Bal was for a long time. And I really saw some of the greatness this week. And even though it didn't result in a tournament win, I mean, you saw, and I think people will focus on like his Siphon 3 game. I mean, that was just Pandora's bench being Pandora's bench. But I mean, what a crazy way to wrap it up too. Both him and Pakigam went like 2nd and 1st to get into that top 8, kicking out Milk and Goobums. Really impressive stuff. And finally, I guess luck fell his way a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't study New Bal deeply, but I really enjoyed what I watched. I thought he was looking good going into the tournament. And I'm really happy for him. I'm so happy for everyone, like New Bal playing, Burt being back and playing really well. Feels like the Young Guns are back with a vengeance this set, and it's going to be really, really scary. I mean, fuck, Goobums is furious with being ranked 4th and getting an 8.5. So
not even tied for 3rd.
Yeah, you know they are hungry, and I want New Bal to. Can we unquit New Bal? Is that available to us? Can you just play all? I know you said you were only gonna play like LCQ and then regionals if you make it. But how about you just play everything instead?
I think maybe that's where the sweet spot is, right? Like if he's just enjoying it and playing casually, I think that might work in his benefit.
Yeah.
Who knows? Might be like kind of like Socks, can still perform well even while juggling life responsibilities.
Plus, maybe Nubal coming back inadvertently takes pressure off of Setsuko, because when Nubal kind of took a step back, Setsuko kind of picked up that mantle, and about like the amazing player who struggles in tourneys. So Nubal, maybe you just gotta like fall on your sword for your boy Kevin here.
Oh, he said he's gonna flake Jade Cup, or he's thinking about it. That's disappointing, but either way, I think you've done enough to kind of show us a lot of what everyone knows you're capable of. So that was a great weekend, man. We should be very proud. Do you want to talk about Goobums, or do you want to skip him to troll him, Bryce?
I'm down either way. I defer to your infinite wisdom.
All right, how about you briefly summarize Goobums this weekend, since he was chatting with you a lot primarily?
Yeah, I had him at a 9. I thought he played the best. I had him basically tied with Milk. I thought he played really good TFT. I didn't see any egregious errors. I think he kind of mid-rolled. If he gets a knock, it's that he's back to being a one-trick. This dude was playing so much Corki, and flex play was good. We saw people doing well playing flex, but no, this man was just playing Corki. But he plays it really well. He really, really, really understood the Corki tree.
I think it's a summary of it. I think what it was we round down, generally speaking. So I gave him 8.5, Bryce gave him 9, instead of like 8.7. Maybe we should probably add the 8.75. We'll see. But again, it depends on how people are perceiving some of these ratings. But again, they're just impressions. Overall, a fantastic weekend for Goobums, even though he narrowly missed it on top 8. He should be very proud too. A player that I think a lot of people were really happy to see do well was Asa. I think Asa has clearly put a lot of time and effort and thoughtfulness into his TFT career so far. And he still had a lot left to be desired from 6.5, because there was so much hype coming from set 6, right? 6, he was dominant. He was doing super well. And then going to 6.5 just felt like a little bit of a tro into his results. And then all of a sudden, coming to set 7, it felt like his journey was slow on the upstart, right? Like he was hard stuck at Masters for a while, said like, this is embarrassing, I'm gonna quit my stream until I can get to a higher rank. And then boom, like 2.5 weeks later, this man's rank 2, threatening rank 1, finally hits rank 1 and puts on a really good series of performances. I think most importantly, Asa's mental fortitude really shone this tournament. I think there was a lot of spots that were super tough, and he was able to navigate them very intelligently and calmly, and came out on the other side rewarded for it. And I think that is what caught my eye the most. I think the comeback where he was playing Corki Jades in a situation where he was not angling for either. He was trying to play something else entirely. I think he was trying to play Zaya, but then finds, Xiaoyu in a contested Jade lobby, finds Corki, like, okay, I just got him to play it, I guess. And then just like slowly but surely pieces his way back from what should be like an 8th place or 7th place. I was telling myself, I'm like, man, this is doomed. His chat was like, this is doomed, and he brings it back and wins out. And then also, later that day puts on like a very unusual build different double trouble board. Just first time I've ever seen that. That's just a lot of really cool stuff. I think Asa played some great TFT this past weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the Corki comeback was really, really good. I thought he had a lot of clean positioning, very, very few like large mistakes, if any. The build different game actually felt totally free to me. I mean, he took a different line on it than I think a lot of people would. He played around the 3 costs of Volibear and the Lee Sin, and I think he sold the Lee for the Yasuo pair. But pretty sure built different. When you're high roll built different early and you streak, and then you streak into double trouble, it's just an illegal combination. Like that feels basically unreasonable, because you want to play 2 copies of good stuff anyway. So all of a sudden your units are just completely overloaded with stats. It was a gold augment lobby, right? But if he had those in a prismatic lobby, he still wins the lobby. That combination of augments was just so strong from his spot.
All right, I see a lot of people flaming it. I'm saying that I don't see anybody else really building out those kinds of versions of boards, and I think it's really cool, and I think it's impressive. Like, I know that a lot of people would be like, well, give that spot to anybody, and they would go first. I just don't think that's true. I think maybe a few people, especially the ones who are really active in chat, could probably convert those into first, but not every player could. And they wouldn't do it in that way either. He showed us a different way that you could approach it that I think is fascinating, right? Most people don't think about re-rolling Volibear in that spot. Like, just nobody. No one, not a single person on stream, on Reddit, on Twitter, in Discord ever mentioned the possibility of putting this kind of combination of board together. And I think it's just like, yes, Double Trouble is that strong, but I also think he crafted that board in an intelligent way and capitalized on it. And I think that's
he
okay.
high rolled, and he showed really good instincts for the game during the high roll. They can both be true.
Yeah, yes. And I think that is fine and should be, I think, recognized for it. Let's talk about Milk. Milk, I think, very quietly put on an amazing, not very quietly, I think he put on an amazing weekend and very loudly went out kicking and screaming on the tiebreakers, like, come on, I can't believe he missed out. But the reason why it's quiet is because it's very subtle how those things kind of work, right? Like, if it was 1 point in almost any way, whether I could put a point throughout the regular days of competition, whether you got the extra point at the very end of day 3, whether he was able to get a point to squeeze out to make it to that top 8. I personally think Milk was top 2 in this tournament, and I think is reflected on his average placement. I think he might have even had the highest AVP. I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me on that, but easily one of the best performances of the weekend that wasn't rewarded based off tiebreakers, which is a little bit unfortunate. But the best part about it was I got to use Milk's results to semi-flame Mortdog. Not really flame him, just more like troll him on broadcast. So that was the highlight of my casting this weekend, where I got to stick it to Mort a little bit.
Love it. I love it because Mort doesn't have enough people sticking it to him. I'm glad we can get some extra shots in.
Well,
Mort, if you're listening, big hugs, buddy. Thank you for the hot fix, and we appreciate everything you're doing.
We love Mort so much. It was fun to also be able to play both sides there. All right, Socks, and then we'll wrap up the segment and show what we got next. Socks is in peak form. I mean, he just showed some really good stuff. The only thing that I think that stopped us from going from 10.0 was that he did feel like on day 3 there were some shaky moments where it's just like, it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. I can totally see why he made some decisions on day 3, but it did feel like it wasn't the most perfect weekend, and that is what's stopping us from a 10.0.
Yeah, but damn was he clean on day 4. He played some really, really, really good TFT on day 4. There's like one spot from all of his games. We're actually going to talk about it later, but I'm not surprised. I could tell looking at the way he approached the early set. Socks is back, baby, and man, is that fun.
Yeah. And I think he was even saying like towards the end of, he's typing in chat right now, I think he was just saying like he was a little bit fatigued and just like didn't want to even really be there. I remember him saying like, look, he was kind of checked out, but he was already qualified because he was doing so well. His day 4 was phenomenal. His VODs are still up, so you should go watch them, and I think it'd be very enlightening to show you how little you are thinking about the set. I think he really shows deep understanding of what really makes things good and how to interchangeably mix them around. And they're just like what's really obnoxious about watching Socks is it all makes sense when you see him do it, but you wouldn't think of it if you're in that spot.
Socks is so good. He's back to being peak-ish form Socks, I would say, that this man put fucking Redemption on a Sona on the main broadcast. And Dan and I did not feel comfortable flaming him. We were like, that seems so stupid, but it's Socks, and he's in pretty peak form, so there's probably a reason. I don't know what the hell is happening right now, but there must be a reason. And then afterwards, people told me, like, Geck, he just misclicked. It's like, oh, God.
All right, well, this is our first edition of the ratings. Next event after Jade Cup, we're going to see more players. Hopefully, we can even add more names and just see how the heat map continues to fill out throughout the set. And I'm looking forward to see, how these tournaments will look after a few of them. That brings us to our third segment. We're a little over halfway of the show. This is a segment we're calling Wood Level Here. Another name, the unofficial name would be WWBD. We're going to present some spots from the tournament and just kind of talk a little bit about what would you do here? What's the play? And so the first one that we have, and this is Bryce curated, is a spot from, I believe, Malala. Malala is a player. Actually, we didn't even talk much about Malala. This is a really good opportunity. We gave them a 7.5 Bryce, why don't you actually take from here and lead most of this segment, since these are the plays that you curated?
Yeah, sounds good. We didn't talk about Malala, and I'm sad we didn't, because I had him at an 8. I thought he played really good TFT. I thought of all of the like lesser known players that I studied, he was the most impressive. He had a number of really cool lines and spots, showed good instincts for the game, playing relatively wide. He's done well in tournaments past, but this is the first time I've ever studied him, and I'm excited to study him in the future. So I think he's an up and comer that we need to keep our eyes on.
All right, so let's talk. Let's just spend like 3 to 4 minutes on each of these if we can. So the spot is 3-2 presented augments. Bryce, we know Malala takes weak spot here, but
don't say it. Don't spoil.
Oh, okay. I'm doing the segment wrong.
Damn it, Dan.
Why don't you lead the segment? It's your part of the show.
Okay, so chat. The question on this one is, what augment would you pick? It's a little blurry. Apologies if you can't tell. He's got a sword on the bench, and he's got an IE and a Radiant Bloodthirster slammed on that Varus. He has also got a Alawi 2 with a Gargoyle. And he, mild spoiler, right? But I'm curious. I am curious how many of you take Recon Bob here, but not ironically, not for content, like actually think it's Recon Bob, because I'm pretty sure this is a Recon Bob angle. He can put the extra Varus in, so he will have 3 rolls at a 4 cost, including 1 2-star 4 cost. He's got a duplicator. He's got insane items for it. And right now he's Varus lean, but he's Varus lean with no bows, which feels very sush to me. So when I saw this, I thought, oh, Pog is going to be a Recon Bob game, and he didn't. He winds up taking weak spot. So,
but
we're supposed to do a chat poll for this.
Oh, okay. We'll do a chat poll for next one. Okay. If we're new to this, we don't have mods. Wait, is Beach still here? If you are, do a poll maybe for next one. But weak spot, I just want to say, is 1, super good, especially if you don't have anti-heal in your composition. And 2, Malala ended up doing well this game anyways. And I think that's what makes TFT really fascinating, because I think most people would look at this spot and say, well, yeah, like take Recombobulator. I think Bryce made a compelling case. A lot of challenger top players are saying Recombobulator. Yeah, why not? Weak spot also found success. I think Malala finished 2nd here. So the question would be, did Malala leave that first place on the table? And I think we agree that he did. It was very much there.
It was game number 2, Sox. So it was not a stage where he can actually say he doesn't need the points, right? It's early on. I think points accumulation, especially in this format, playing a little bit first to 8 felt good because you need to get in the top 8.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
And yeah, this game really works out for him, by the way. He takes weak spot, he commits to Varus, he hits on curve. He actually goes no bow Varus. He goes these 2 items plus Deathblade, and then he gets a Zeke's off of Treasure Dragon, and it has like enough attack speed and hits like a truck. So it winds up going very well for him. But I felt like this was a Recon Bob angle, personally.
Okay. All right. So that was our first. We have 3 prepared. Here is Exhibit B, featuring mismatched socks. Bryce.
Okay, so I think this is in 2 parts, right? So, and they're both...
Oh, you're right.
They're both augment selections. So this is Sox' 4th game on day 3. Oh, this is we need the clip first,
right? Okay.
Yeah, the clip first. So let's look at his 3-2, and then we're gonna look at his 4-1 augments.
Verdant Veil.
Or 4-2, 3-2, 4-2.
So this is 3-2. He's presented Guardian Crown, Verdant Veil, or New Recruit.
And he's gonna scout. He's gonna scout, which is why this is a clip as opposed to just a screenshot, so you can see the other board strength.
Right. And he's a lot of HP. He seems to be doing well.
But it's gonna be late game insanely.
And he chooses Verdant Veil. And Bryce, you said that he said Verdant Veil because he felt like it was really good late game that he was scaling into it.
Later.
But it completely sacrificed his tempo, right?
Yeah. We gotta stop spoiling the selection. But I guess I clipped it longer. So yes, he takes Verdant Veil because he says this is a broken augment and it is broken in the late game. But for what's worth, I was watching this live and kind of talking to Dan. And I was like, wow, Sox's spot is disgusting. It's guaranteed top 2. It's like there's no way. And I think he kind of throws this game low key. So he takes Verdant Veil here. I think it's new recruit or it's reroll, but I do not like Verdant Veil from here. He scouts around, he sees that it's getting no value right now. That's literally what he is saying out loud, is like, this is no value, so let's just cop it anyway because it is going to scale so well into the late game.
Vertigo's gonna be.
Okay. Again, I'm sorry about this. I'm kind of new to it.
It's all good. It's all good.
Now we get to a point where Bryce can run the segment as planned. Take it away.
Okay. All right. So the question is now, what is the play from his 4-2 augment spot? You can see his board state. He's down at 65 HP because he's lost a meaningful amount of tempo from taking Verdant Veil, so everyone else Prismatic spiked when he really didn't. He's offered Curse Crown, Revel Crown, Evoker Crown, and he still has his reroll left open. So if we can get a quick poll in the chat, I would be very curious for people's thoughts in the chat. Dan, as you're thinking through this spot, what do you think is the consideration here of these 3 options, or 4 options, I guess, 3 choices plus a reroll?
So Evoker Crown.
Yeah. Oh, reroll should be an option, Kana. If it's not,
reroll should be an option.
Yeah.
Well.
Let's do it really fast and just do reroll as an option.
Yeah. So Revel Crown in general feels like it's just more of an early win streak that you can build into it. Static Shiv this late into the game feels like it's much lower impact. Evoker Crown. I just don't even know how to use Evoker very effectively outside of like cheese strategies, right? Like you put like Evoker Rise, but you get Rise early and you snowball it, right? Like that's the only way that I know how to make Evokers really good. So I don't blame Sox for taking it. Curse Crown is particularly interesting because I can't tell you how many times I've seen people take Curse Crown and everything looks really good, and then 2 rounds later they're dead. I was in a lobby with Darth Noob the other day, and Darth Noob was like 92 HP going to 4-1 with Curse Crown, and he was dead by 4-3. I didn't even... Yeah. It was so crazy. I was like, wait, what? What just happened? Because he missed on his roll down. He actually didn't have anything of substance. So I would reroll here is my personal belief of like, I don't think any of these options seem ideal. Maybe Curse Crown if Sox is feeling extra spicy, and I think Curse Crown has a high skill cap. Like, you have to really understand what makes boards strong. That being said, I'd probably reroll because I'm a wuss.
Yeah, I would reroll this for sure. I think the fact that he has 10 gold is a huge impact on this, because I think that from 10 gold pivoting to a board that makes Revel Crown strong is super unlikely from here. It's a crazy pivot across. He has no gold to work with. I just think that is a really, really hard line. And taking a Shiv with this board state just doesn't feel like it's big enough impact. So I just don't think that, like, the Shiv value pushes it over for me. So I would re-roll this personally, but I liked in comparison to these 2 decisions, I really disagreed with the Verdant Veil pick. This one I can see. I mean, again, these spots are not necessarily the person did it wrong. It's an interesting spot to look at and see what people think. So it looks like re-roll won the poll. Revel Crown was second. No one really seriously considered Curse Crown or Evoker, which seems right to me.
Yep. And the answer was a Revel Crown, which I think Sox revealed in chat as well. Which, again, I think to Sox's credit, not the worst pick, but definitely nothing great. And he ended up getting 4th that game, but I think from a position that Bryce is saying, he probably could have done it better. And Sox even said he misplayed.
Yeah, I think if you ran this game back, Sox goes top 2 like almost every time.
Yep. All right. That brings us to our last exhibit that we have, the example. It's from Dace, who actually previewed a little bit of it in chat. Bryce, take it away.
Okay, so we're going to be looking at Dace's 3-2 spot. This one is harder to do a poll prediction on because it's not augments. We need to think about that a little bit more. But he's scouting around, looking at his opponent board strength. He sees a Varus 2 there with Ginsu's and Last Whisper. He sees one really weak board, Ray Super Weak, and then he looks at Nico's board, which is also really strong. Nico is also 100 HP. He has Ginsu's Rage Blade and a Shiv. He has some upgraded frontline. He's got Jade in. And so Dace is trying to decide how to protect this winning streak with his current board state. Siphon 1. I mean, everything 1 except for Heimer, which is, irrelevant, I think, to this board state. And he's about to rip it. He's about to go to 7 here. And he goes to 7 here, and then he loses this fight. And I'm pretty sure he turns like an average placement 3 this game into an average placement 5 with this decision. And I'm not just saying it because he lost. It's just it's such a risky play, and I think he does lose 2 fights in his pool there. I think he lost to the Varus board, and I think he also loses to a Nikos board here. He just doesn't have damage. I don't know how this guy expects to win fights against like well-constructed boards at this stage. Like Siphon 1 is not actually getting it done most of the time unless you get crazy RNG.
Yeah, or if your front line's good enough to stall, right? So then, like, if this Silas was cracked out beyond belief, you could have it cast a couple times. Siphon gets 2 casts of Rampage, snipes some important units, and all of a sudden you win just by having a snowball advantage. Another thing is that I don't really know how relevant, like, leveling for this Jinx was, right? They didn't even feel, like, particularly super strong. Everyone knows Jinx is more of the disposable unit there. That being said, we've seen some tempo plays from players in the past. What separates this from other tempo plays you've seen people go to 7 very quickly, Bryce, and it worked out for them?
Okay, I think if you're doing it, you have to have something really good to play, and you have to be like 100% you're winning your fights, all your fights in your pool, and you have to be really confident that you are like you're spiking, right? Like that it's both adding to your board substantively and that you're gonna win. And I don't think he needs either of these conditions, quite frankly. I don't think like playing a bruiser here, playing a random TK here really does much of anything.
Yeah.
And he loses 1 fight. I'm pretty sure he loses 2 out of the 3 fights. So this is like, I mean, the funny thing is, the question is what would Bebe do here, right? Is the name of the segment. What would Bebe do? Bebe would level here. He totally would. And Milk would do a TikTok about it, being like, yo, bro, like, no flame, but actually there is no fucking way this is a level. And then, we've seen this story before. Milk winds up in jail. I have to bail him out. It's just brutal.
That's right. I do want to add one more piece of context. And again, we're figuring out how to do this segment properly, so I think next time we'll have a little bit more prepared. Dace also did level to 6 before Krugs as well. So I think in his mindset, to his defense, was thinking, I'm playing a tempo line. I know I'm probably playing more for top 4 than top 1 in this situation. It just completely blew up in his face. And I think this is a little bit of a precaution to people who might be getting these kinds of ideas in tournaments moving forward. Just be very, very cautious of that.
I think thinking of this play as playing for top 4 is the snake oil that people get sold. Like, it's so funny the fact that Bebe described Milk as a noob trap, because in many ways I don't think Milk is a noob trap. I think Bebe is a noob trap. Not that I think Bebe is bad. I think Bebe is very good at the game, but I see bad players watch Bebe and do this stuff all the time, because oftentimes Bebe does it when it's incorrect. Like when Milk pointed out that level on 2-1 where it was just for sure wrong. Right, and so I think that the actual top 4 play here is just to say it doesn't matter if I'm streaking anymore. I've already had a great early game. I have an early siphon. And I'm in a great spot. That's how you play for top 4 here. Pushing this level is actually much more of a first wraith play and is not correct.
I love it. I'm gonna be the one bailing Bryce, and Bryce is gonna be the one sitting next to Milk saying that was awesome in the prison cell.
Milk, as long as we have good internet, I'll hang out with you.
All right, there we go. Man, my cheeks are hurting from smiling so much. All right, well, let's bring us to our final segment of the show before we wrap it up. It's a segment I'm calling Pog or Frog. Is the play something that was, we're kind of commemorating some of the most Pog moments that happened, or one that make you feel an emotion that makes you post a Pepe in chat? So we'll see. And we have several of them. So
okay,
go ahead.
Are you going to do the poll? Are you going to explain the polling to Kana?
Yeah. So we are going to have chat decide what was the most Pog play. You're going to vote in chat. And you're also going to vote for which was the most Frog play, which will also be determined. And so which one to start? We'll start with the Frogs, right?
Start with the Frogs. And really fast, we're also going to... Your votes are going to matter, because we're going to keep the biggest frog and the biggest pog from each event, and then for the post-set wrap, we're going to have them all competing against each other. So we'll vote for like the best and worst plays of the set. We will vote on at the end. And this is also a shout out to anyone that watches a bunch of streams, which all of you do, or people playing. If you see fail moments, or if you see awesome moments of interesting things happening in game, please clip them and send them to us, because right now we're just we asked some people. We did our best to curate from what we saw, but I know we
5
can
loss
do
streak,
even more with the
70
segment if we can
HP,
actually
looking
like
this is
crowdsource
forcing
the
Italy.
submissions.
Am I crazy? Is that
Everyone's
what's
already
happening?
spamming in chat.
might
They
be.
know
We're still
our
level 4,
first
so,
candidate, our
and
first
we're running
finalist
no Astrals right
for
now.
the
It
Frog
is
Award of
the,
Astral Cup
PV
is
as a creep round, and
Bertosaurus
we're gonna get a Hodge.
going
That's
up
a pretty good
against
item,
Krug.
actually, for
Slams the
Italy.
hand
We're
of
gonna put
justice.
it right on.
Recognizes this is a
As-
dire
Are we gonna
situation.
lose to
Needs to
Krugs?
have more
I
power
think
onto
that's
the board. And that nearly is trying
gonna
so
be
hard,
one of
but
the-
they
Are
turn
we losing to
around.
Krugs?
With Hand
And
of
Narguise
Justice.
finally takes out one Krug.
Bert, Bert,
That's another drop.
Bert.
I was wondering if he would even go as far as to slam the
Oh
Loses
no!
to the Krugs.
My
I
son,
believe the caster audio said
putting you
are
up
no
for
longer
adoption
my
after
son.
that.
So that is
Bertosaurus
the first
losing to
candidate.
Krugs, maybe waiting
Bert
for an
losing
item
to
in the later
Krugs.
games.
I'm depressed.
For the frog.
I'm
Let's go to our
depressed.
second one.
For
Our
now.
second one is kind of unusual. It is Solus versus Kranos. Now, if
Wait,
you
what?
look, there's two
Idas 3
Siphon
and
2s
Diamond Hand Yasuo,
versus
so
an
we're giving you a
Idas
hard
3
time.
and a Yasuo with Diamond Hands. If you didn't see what happened, just watch.
The audio on the clips are too loud apparently.
Why is
Dan,
that
if you can turn down
Yasuo
the audio a
shield?
little
Like,
bit.
is that even legal? Who allowed this? Wait. Wait.
I can't remember. Did we cast this or did they cast this? They did, right? We were watching.
It was on.
Oh.
Wait.
Oh my goodness.
Dan, apparently you turned us down, not the clip audio down.
Sorry, I'm not I'm not the audio video guy, but I kind of am. So what ended up happening was Solus ends up tying Kranos because he couldn't kill the Idas 3 because the Siphon 2, one of the Siphon 2s was stuck on Diamond Hands Yasuo, and ends up tying and dying,
Yasuo shield.
both causing both of them to be eliminated in second and third place while Taco Bell Wi-Fi watches and cruises to an easy first, which I just think is hilarious. I've never seen a tie for second and third and another person just gets a default win.
Yeah, all things coming up. Taco Bell Wi-Fi on day 3 of the event. He doesn't even fight one of these people, and they kill each other. Also, the Archangel on the Itis, so that these shields in overtime are just like disgusting. It's like beyond the whole health bar. Too good.
All right. The third is a moment that we talked about before. It is Kuramex with when he had at one point 115 gold, level 9, streaking infinite, playing 9 Shimmer Scale versus Socks in this game. And Kurum, by all means, should have won. And we'll roll the clip.
Rolled. Fuck.
He thinks he's won, so he's rolling.
Wait,
Just watching it back, so
wait,
sad.
I lost. Oh, okay. We're chilling. We are chilling. We are fucking chilling.
Oh, no.
Oh,
This is
my
when he
Punisher
realizes
was
too,
dead.
right? He's just saying it's fine a bunch. I can't hear the
Oh,
audio.
I lost this game. Oh man, it's okay. Second is not bad. Okay,
Oh.
my bad, I guess.
Sag.
All right, so it's pull time. Kane, if you can, put it up. 1, 2, or 3. 1 being Bert losing to Krugs. 2 being Solus tying in Idas 3. And the third would be Kurum's Shimmer Throw versus Socks. Chat gets to vote. I guess, Bryce, do you want to what are you voting for?
I have to vote for Kurum because, I mean, look, losing to Krugs is pretty bad for sure, but it doesn't feel nearly as much like it's just like a stupid mistake that we all make sometimes, whereas like actively throwing the game on level 9 from this spot. I mean, this is the screenshot here, this is a 100% win rate, right? Like you basically can AFK and win In fact, he might be able to give Caitlyn from the spot. And so it was tough. It was tough to watch, and we could see it in real time. He realized the fight was going badly way after, I think, because he was so focused on rolling. His whole chat is like, "Oh God, not like this." So yeah, that one takes the cake for me.
All right. It looks like it's a runaway vote. Chat has 81% voted for Kurum to have the most frog play. It's okay. We've all been there. And most importantly, Kurum recognized what he did afterwards. He's like, oh, it was rolling during that play. That messed it up. And as a result, I cost myself the game. It's okay. It gets the best of us. And I expect Koom to come back in full force for the Jade Cup.
Agreed.
All right. So this next one, Bryce, can you do me a favor and send this over to Kana beforehand so she has the poll stuff prepared?
Send her the 5 so she's got the poll ready?
Yes. So we're going to show
Kana.
them one by one because we have 5 of them. The first one is a submission from Iniko. Iniko, able to use Zephyr positioning and utilize it for maximum Nidalee backline access against Goobums. So after the Edge of Night procs, Nidalee goes to the back line. It's a pretty nice play. You know, it's overall just showcasing some cool stuff, some positioning tricks.
No, I'll just do it anyway. Fuck
And
it.
able to maximize Nidalee efficiency.
Actually, might not. Low key, this Yasuo is kind of scary. Never mind.
All
I'm
right.
not fucking owning.
Our
Oh, fuck
next
this.
play is Robin Songs. Now, everyone says Robin's a little bit on the old side,
All right, I'm gonna try something
but
crazy.
he's going to try something crazy.
Sure.
Frontline Deja, getting it done.
It's looking good. It's looking good. This Nico unit. Let's go! Easy. That's an APM diff.
Nice job, Robin.
TFT.
I love the sub right
Things off.
afterwards. Our next one
Setsuko and
is
Socks tie for number
Bryce,
1. This is kind of
predicting
contentious. I think a lot of
Socks.
people
Right, I
weren't even
forgot I
putting
was the
Socks
5th.
at number 1 in terms of the discussion of best player because Setsuko's kind of running away with the ladder in terms of LP. But so why is Socks so high,
we
Bryce?
put this
Like
in?
what's
Bryce predicting.
putting him so
no
up there
idea.
in a lot of players' minds when they're voting?
I don't even think this is close. I think if there were a tournament held tomorrow with 500 games played, which is the prompt that we use, that Sox would finish significantly ahead of Setsuko. I think there's a very big gap there, if I'm being honest. I think that if a lot of newer TFT fans don't know how good Sox is, because it's been basically 3 sets since he was really in peak form. I mean, I remember when he played, it's our podcast, we can say, when we played Bang Bros, when he was a Bang Bros one trick, Slash Bros, for those of you who want to be the PC version, I was like personally devastated. I like
Things off. Setsuko and Socks
All right.
tie for number.
Our fourth is Socks, able to use a
We're fine,
frontline Shio Ululu combination to get to
This
the
might be
back
kind of
line.
Nico diff. Nico's gonna buff this Shiryu. He's gonna go straight to the back line. If Nico gets hit, he buffs Shiryu. Shiryu one-shots the back line. Exactly. Let's fucking go. That's a positioning gap. I am so
Man,
good!
this is so clean.
Holy! My mental is beyond blessed right now. My mental is beyond blessed right now. This play, holy!
And our fifth is Asa, able to manipulate Siphon positioning for a really close victory. What I really like about that Asa play in particular was that's not how you position Jades normally, right? Everyone clumps up and tries to surround the Jade statue, just doing some really interesting stuff overall to make sure to get that win. So, what will it be for the Pog play? Everybody can vote in chat. They were all Bedge, no Flame. I asked you, Milk, if you had any Pog plays, and you dono-walled me. You messed up the poll. Fifth. Okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
It's fine. I don't deserve votes anyway. It's good. Someone threw Robin. Robin got 2 votes. Go, Robin.
I'll vote for Robin. I feel bad, you know.
I'm surprised that Sox is so much higher than Asa. I thought that Asa's play was like roughly equivalent. I thought they were both. Those were my 2 favorites. They were both really, really cool. I'm surprised Sox is running away with it.
Asa and Sox are doing. I had some really cool stuff. I thought Iniko's was also pretty cool. Like,
yeah, I
underrated.
agree.
I think those kinds of things to manipulate positioning as if you're almost controlling the champions on Summoner's Rift are some of the coolest stuff that you can do.
Wait, no one explained the Asa play they're saying, because okay, so what Asa did is he bought, instead of clumping his Jade and allowing the fight to play out where Siphon was going to get access, he essentially created a fight dynamic in which the Siphon was almost never going to get to the Corki until the fight was over. So he clumps his 3 units in the middle, he puts the Gnar behind it, and he guarantees that the dash is going to go across and then away because there's no units over there. So it was just really, really good understanding of Siphon's AI to manipulate the fight. And the fight was super close. It was a positioning diff for sure.
That's right. And I think a lot of people think Siphon is like very random and it's like it's really hard to predict, but Asa just predicted it perfectly and manipulated it in a very nice way. But I think a lot of people just see what Sox is doing. I think also, like, you know, this last second shift to Shiryu in the corner and placing Lulu up there so you can get the polymorph and the attack speed boost to the Shiryu to get access to the backline. Very clever, and just I think overall just shows you what you are potentially missing if you're just saying, I'm going to skip TFT tournaments, just look at the result and make my judgments off of that. You get to see these little small nuggets of wisdom to help elevate your play, especially if you're looking for inspiration. All right, congratulations to Sox, and a better luck next time to Kurum. They are our 2 winners for tonight on this episode of Don't Talk If You Don't Know. And that was our first edition of Pog or Frog. We'll work on it, we promise. The audio and also making sure that we have all the polls and stuff adjusted. And that brings us to the conclusion of this episode. The next tournament coming up is Jade Cup. Our next episode will be 2 weeks from now about the Jade Cup. So make sure you guys tune in then.
We can leak who is on the episode, by the way.
Oh, yes. So next episode for Jade Cup, July 28th, the preview leading up to it will be Bertosaurus and Setsuko. They're going to be joining Bryce and myself for Don't Talk If You Don't Know. Bryce, this is where you show your excitement as well.
I am very excited to have Kevin. Sorry, Sox is DMing me about the play. I'm very, very excited for Bert and Setsuko to come on. I think it's going to be such a good episode. I'm really excited to get Kevin on before going back. You know, he goes back into the lion's mouth, as it were. I hope he has a good bounce back Jade Cup, and I'm so excited to have Bert back. So I think they're going to make for a great episode.
I think so as well. So make sure you guys tune in, and then after Jade Cup, I think we're going to try to do a review episode a little bit earlier, because the problem is that we're doing review when the new patch drops. And I think a lot of people want to look forward and say, hey, that was last patch. Let's not talk about previous patch of like things that aren't even viable as much anymore, right? Like how much people are playing a bunch of these X carries that got nerfed. So we're going to try to do it on Tuesday instead, on August 9th, and see how that works as that cadence. But yeah, that brings us to the end. So let's go ahead and get ready for some final thoughts, Bryce, to wrap up this episode.
A lot of fun. I mean, production kinks notwithstanding, right? We figured we're experimenting with some new segments. We appreciate you pairing with us, but I think the core concept of this show is really good, and I'm excited to do more of the like post-game wrap ones. I think it's fun to immediately after a tournament kind of reflect on who did well, who did poorly, and why.
That's right. I think, it definitely could use a guest. We want to try a little bit more intimate with just Bryce and myself, but I think having a third person with us will add a lot of depth. I'm sure Goobums would immediately say yes if we asked him to and just start immediately dumping all of his thoughts left and right. I can't wait. But it's been a really good episode. Thank you, everyone who showed up. Thank you, Kana, for modding and Beaches at the beginning. Thanks for Phil for the raid. And that does it for this episode of Don't Talk If You Don't Know. And we'll see you next time for more TFT action.